Hi, I'm Transapient, and I'm quite sure that, barring some obscure mental pathogen that would demand immediate medical attention, I don't have to tell you that dinosaurs are awesome. These creatures were and still are one of the most successful groups of diapsid tetrapods Earth has thus far seen. First appearing around 230 million years ago as small, opportunistic generalists, they rose to dominate most terrestrial niches throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. 66 million years ago, however, their fortunes changed with the KT extinction event, which wiped out about 75% of known life at the time. Among their kin, only neornithine birds survived. But like most other survivors, they would radiate into a menagerie of new forms throughout the Cenozoic. And while mammals now occupy most terrestrial niches today, there are some 9 to 10,000 species of birds living across the planet as well. Indeed, dinosaurs should be thought of as a still active and important part of Earth's fauna to this day, heavily influencing most ecosystems as well as human cultures. But let's be honest, this isn't what comes to most minds when they hear the word dinosaur. This is more like it. But the privilege of seeing living, non-avian dinosaurs is one that seems forever denied to us. Barring perhaps some unprecedented scientific developments, we can only study these spectacular creatures today via fossilized remains. And for this reason, probably coupled with the fact that humans seem to innately desire that which we cannot have, dinosaurs have captivated imaginations across the world since their first formal scientific descriptions in the early 1800s. To that point, we have sought to bring them to life via art in all mediums, from paintings to monuments, and eventually to the silver screen with the advent of cinema. Throughout the 20th century, dinosaurs would become established as icons of a range of motion picture projects almost as varied as themselves, from purely entertaining spectacles to scientifically oriented recreations of their lost world. Emphasis on the lost part, for dinosaurs have also become icons of extinction, and many films and programs have made a point of depicting their seemingly destined demise. Such depictions of disastrous die-offs or extinction events have become something of a trope associated with dinosaur media. During the early half of the 20th century, the extinction was often portrayed via volcanic or climactic upheavals that reduced much of the presumed swampy hothouse world of the dinosaurs to a morbidly bleak and barren land of drought and famine, effectively dooming the reptilian giants to a slow but inevitable end. Later geological evidence, however, would point to a more sudden and drastic extraterrestrial source of extinction, in the form of a massive meteor, estimated to have been around 6 to 9 miles in diameter, which impacted Earth in the Gulf of Mexico, forming the Chicxulub crater. This event would have been singularly and unprecedentedly devastating to a degree that is quite literally outside human experience. Naturally, this has led to many modern representations of dinosaur extinction as being of a much more bombastic nature. Modern technologies now allow many films to showcase this larger-than-life event with visually stunning displays of devastation. Even most scientifically oriented documentaries usually can't resist the allure of such a humbling scale and spectacle, and often make a point of going out with a bang, literally, as it were. All that said, there is one extinction scene that actually has very little in the way of destructive spectacle, but that, I feel at least, may be one of the most effective portrayals of this event in any dinosaur-related media ever. I speak, of course, of the finale of the final episode of Walking with Dinosaurs. I'm sure most people with an interest in dinosaurs reserve much fondness for this program, and it needs little introduction. Walking with Dinosaurs was a revolutionary nature documentary for its time, often imitated today, but still, most would say, yet to be bested. Much of the effects have aged quite well, all things considered, and the cinematography, storytelling, musical score, and blend of science and speculation are all beautifully executed, which is why it remains the gold standard for dinosaur documentaries, despite some increasingly outdated reconstructions. It's possible then that some may feel rather disappointed by its seemingly lackluster extinction scene, especially if one were more used to something of a grander scale that has become the relative norm for other documentaries. Indeed, the scene apparently even breaks one of the golden rules of cinema, telling us what's happening more so than showing us at some points, as the impact event happens totally off screen. Visually, the scene seems to be somewhat static as well, mostly consisting of a few straightforward shots and angles of the landscape and doomed tyrannosaur family. It's also over quite quickly, with the whole sequence barely lasting over a minute from the moment of impact, and what little direct destruction is shown hardly even lasts a quarter of that time. On paper, this would seem to render Walking with Dinosaurs' extinction scene as somewhat lacking, but of course, I don't think this is the case. Like most things, the real key to its greatness lies in its execution. In fact, as they are handled so well, those very properties that would appear to lessen it actually enhance and elevate it. I would say it's a prime example of less being more, as it clearly isn't going for spectacle and plays out as a natural drama as intended. To fully explore this topic, let's take a closer, in-depth look at the scene's progression. Walking with Dinosaurs' final episode, Death of a Dynasty, primarily follows a female Tyrannosaurus as she attempts to raise a family. This type of storyline, following the personal lives of individual animals, is one of the program's strong points, utilized in all episodes, and helps the audience to get invested in the creatures. Throughout this final episode, the mother T-Rex has struggled to provide for her offspring, making her quite relatable on a primal level. It's therefore an emotional blow when she's crippled by a startled Ankylosaurus. Evidently, this was the straw that broke the Rex's back, as she passes away that night, and the next we see of the family, her two remaining chicks are standing by her body. This is already a heartbreaking scene itself, but it's enhanced by the relentlessly bleak tone set by the music and the setting. Just look at the place. The landscape is almost completely desolate, with only a few distant, sparse trees and a looming volcano in the background. It conveys isolation, exposure, and helplessness most effectively, making it very easy to sympathize for the young dinosaurs. Speaking of which, the program made a very wise decision to utilize them as the focal point during the extinction sequence. There's a brief montage of reused clips of other dinosaurs seen before in the episode, but primary attention remains on these two animals. This further endorses an emotional connection between the audience and these infant tyrannosaurs, whom we stick with throughout this event. There's also quite a bit of dramatic irony to the scene. The juveniles' only conception of safety is, of course, with their mother, so they stay near her even as she no longer moves. It's clear they don't fully understand what's going on, and of course they can't possibly have any idea as to what's about to happen. Speaking of which, the impact itself is not directly shown, but this is actually in keeping with the directorial style of the rest of the show. Walking with Dinosaurs was filmed in such a way as to resemble a real nature documentary, as if a film crew had actually traveled back in time and were filming these animals in their environment. So there are seemingly no magic shots that couldn't possibly have been caught on camera, such as a giant meteor striking Earth from orbit, as cool as that would be. Walking with Dinosaurs is also known for its beautiful and often haunting musical scores. But there's a noticeable lack of any music in the wake of the impact, creating an eerie, apprehensive atmosphere. A calm before the storm, as it were. Goes to show that the absence of music can also be just as effective. All that tension is immediately cranked up to 11 when we see the incoming blast wave created by the force of the impact. As it approaches, the cries of other dinosaurs can be heard in the distance. This is an excellent example of leaving the horror to the viewer's imagination, which can sometimes be far worse than anything that can be displayed on screen. When the destruction finally reaches the remnants of the Tyrannosaur family, it's all over almost thankfully quickly. The sheer power of the blast is conveyed swiftly but effectively, as first the infants are whipped off screen, followed by the multi-ton carcass of their mother that's blown away like a dead leaf. When the active destruction fades, it gives way to a desolate, apocalyptic land of darkness and raining fire. Throughout this sequence, the narration by Kenneth Branagh is as on point as ever, seemingly coldly distant at times, but emotionally emphasizing at just the right times to lend an extra bit of weight to the events. But despite this bleakness, the series still ends on an optimistic note, showing how the Earth and its ecosystems have recovered, and dinosaurs living on as birds. And on that same note, that pretty much sums up my analysis of the Walking with Dinosaurs extinction scene. Interestingly, now that I think about it, it seems to be a blend of both a classic slow die-off sequence and the swifter, more destructive events of later portrayals. I'm not saying that more spectacular extinction scenes are without merit, for they most certainly are important in their own way. But variety is the spice of life, and the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs, as portrayed by Walking with Dinosaurs, is a most unique and impactful sequence, with great visual storytelling, atmosphere, and an intimacy and restraint rarely seen elsewhere. But that's just this one Transapien's opinion. Feel free to let me know in the comments how you feel about this scene, and of other favorite extinction events across dinosaur media. Thanks as always for watching, and have a nice day.